know it's been, I'm just going to do some intro stuff. So welcome back. Tim has gone back to Winnipeg. So you've had 2 weeks now of the phase 2 stuff, which is a little more in-depth, a little more kind of crazy out there. Just one thing I wanted to say was people were asking, why didn't we get any handouts for Tim's notes? And I just want to explain why. The week on relationships, which you covered in one night last week, has 72 pages worth of information on it. I know because I typed it all up. 72 pages. So there was no point in giving you all 72 pages. For one, it's expensive. For two, anybody who's going to be teaching the phase 2 program will give that to you. And what Tim does is he kind of sets it all out on his table, and then as people are asking questions and being directed and stuff, then he'll go and pick up that bunch of notes and they'll go through that stuff, and then they'll go to another one. But they spend an entire week on relationships. So they cover a lot of that material, but they don't cover all of it because there's no way you can cover all that in a week. So that's why we didn't give you the notes, because it's just kind of all over there, and he'll take one phrase and do that for an entire morning and for an hour and a half. So it's just a whole different field than in phase 1. So here we are back at phase 1. We're starting over again, I know. We've got 2 more weeks of phase 1. So what we're going to do is kind of go back to the notes. The other thing I want to mention to you guys is I don't usually hand out the notes to people until after the class is done. The reason for that is if I hand them the notes, they sit back in their chair and say, I don't have to listen anymore, and then they just zone out. So you're going through them kind of in a different way that they would in phase 1, because in phase 1 they're very, they don't know what's coming, they don't see all the answers there, and so they're very interactive. You've got the notes there, so it's just a bit of a different feel. So that's why that is. The other thing I wanted to say was that Tim did pick and choose a few things that we talk about in phase 1. I gave him heck when I got home. It's like, I'm supposed to be teaching that. One of the things was stages of development. So if you go back, relationship red flags, I think there's 4 pages, and then at the end there's a page called stages of development. So go to that one. We're just going to look at that briefly and talk about it, and then we're going to go on to relationship red flags. So, just as Tim described it, this is us in the middle. And again, when we're talking to people from unhealthy behaviors and addicts, they don't really understand much about themselves. So all this information is really new. So when we talk about the center being ourselves, and the circles are how close we allow people to get to us, this is all new. They don't get it at all. They don't understand until we talk it through. So it sounds like it's all review to you guys. You are all high-functioning people. You get it. But we go over it because a lot of people just don't understand the concept. Okay? So we're going to start at number 1. That is our outer circle. And these are the acquaintances in our life. They're the people that we meet, we bump into on the street. We get to know them a little bit, different places in our lives. But we don't know a lot of information about them. They're not our best friends. We know a little bit about them. We know that we both like to stop at Tim Hortons every morning. That's where we meet. So we kind of say hi in the hallway. They're the acquaintances. So those are the people that we get to know just on the surface. Those are, we know their name, we know maybe where they go, who they're married to, just a few things about that person, but nothing deep at all. This is the stage where if we're going to go a little closer, we need to find out if they're a safe person. And one of the examples that I had from my own life is I started to work with a girl. Now, we didn't work in the same room, so I kind of saw her on breaks and didn't know her very much. As soon as I started to ask a few questions, and that's how you get to know people, start asking a few questions, I found out that all her relationships were unhealthy relationships. She'd been married 3 times. She was about my age. Married 3 times, had 6 or 7 live-in boyfriends, and all of them crashed and burned. So at that point, it was like, okay, that's not somebody I'm going to allow closer into my inner circle. So at that point, I just decided, it was a mental decision, this is not somebody that I want to be very close close with. And so I put up those boundaries, and we still continued to talk about the weather and what our kids were doing and all that kind of stuff. But she was going to stay at level 1. I did not want her any closer. The next one, number 2 circle, is a casual friend. So that's where you're starting to get to know people a little bit better. That's where you're meeting maybe one-on-one, you're going out for coffee, you sit in the break room and you talk about a little bit more than just the weather or more than, you know, what your kids are doing, maybe go a little bit deeper. And this is where we have to really start looking at character and what they're really like. So another example, one of my co-workers, she was actually a Christian girl, and I thought, well, I got to know her a little bit, maybe I can go to the next level with her. So we went out for coffee, we did a few things, and then I started to see that she lied all the time. She lied to her boss, she lied to her siblings, she lied to her parents, and at that point I had to say, okay, that's not somebody that I really want any closer to me. So I kind of pushed her back to level 1, and now we just talked about the weather and things going on in our lives, but I had to push her back out. The thing that Tim will talk about often is once we let people into one more sphere of our circle of life, it's really hard to push them back because they already have that sense of, okay, we're a little closer, we can do all these things together, we can talk about these things. When I decided that it wasn't somebody I wanted even close to me and to push her back out, that was hard because then she'd keep wanting me, let's go for coffee, let's do this. And I'm like, well, you know, at first I started to make excuses. I'm busy, I didn't want to. And finally I had to say, you know, I've got a lot of people in my life, and I had to say as nicely as I could, you're not going to be one of those close friends in my life, so let's just go back to being acquaintances. Luckily, she was good with that because she was busy too, but that can get really messy, especially when you get into the closer circles. You start letting people into your life and then you find out what they're really like, their character. It is really difficult in a lot of places to push them back out. That's why we always say, before you ask people to come in a little closer, check out their character first before you start making plans for coffee and all that kind of stuff. So you have to at this point say, okay, good character, not character, do I want to go any closer? And then you can go into the next one. Now number 3 is a very close friend. That's somebody that you can tell your secrets to, someone that you have more of a rapport, you spend some more time together. That's a casual friend. And we in our lives, we have hundreds of acquaintances, a handful of, what's the next one, casual friends. Close friends, we only have a few. We don't have room in our lives in a lot of places to have too many close friends because having a close friend requires a lot of energy, a lot of time and energy, and if we have families on our own, we have to be careful about spending more time with our friends than with our children and our spouses. Level number 4 is our soulmate, and you can tell that person anything without any fear of judgment. That's the person that you're just bonded. The thing with, and I said that right on the bottom here, stages 3 and 4 take 1 to 2 years to develop. So we're going to go into a little bit of this. The relationship red flags is because, and I won't jump ahead, but a lot of people who have come from complex trauma, they're desperate for intimacy and close friendships, and they will jump immediately to number 3 or 4. Then, when they find out that the person has a lot of red flags and you really don't want to be in a romantic relationship with them, backing out can be really, really tricky. So I just wanted to go over that. Tim talked about it briefly, but I wanted to go back and do that. All right, we're going to go into our relationship red flags. Just a couple things about that is red flags. No, not very many relationships are absolutely perfect, and there's going to be no red flags. The reason I tell you that is if Tim knew about this list before he started dating me, he probably wouldn't have married me. Because I had a lot of those things going on before I was healthy. It was before we had the list. But thank goodness he saw underneath, right? He saw the character, so he knew that I was willing to learn and grow. But some of these red flags are deal breakers. You're going to see them as we go along because some of them you cannot put up with. Some of them, some of them you can help them change if they're willing to listen to anybody else. then they can, if they're really committed to growing and having a deeper relationship, then they will be able to work on themselves, and that would be okay. But some of them are deal breakers. Yes. And the last thing I want to say about it before we begin is when people come out of complex trauma, and especially if they're addicts of some sort, either process addictions or alcohol, drugs, any of those addictions, relationships are the #1 thing that'll take people out, because they get into the relationships. Relationships are always great at the beginning, that's why they're relationships. But as soon as you start to get really close to somebody and you find out some of these red flags going on, it just becomes very hard, because addicts, we've talked about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, addicts can't trust, they can't feel, and they can't, help me out, Brett. Think, feel, trust, feel, yeah, all those things. So they don't know how, so relationships are really, really hard. So let's start off with #1. A person who is extremely needy. A person who's extremely needy needs other people to tell them how great they are. The problem with that is they never believe it. So I know when Tim and I were first married, I was pretty needy because I had such low self-esteem. I didn't know who I was, so I was afraid to make decisions because it would be the wrong one. So I was very needy. I'd always be asking him, is this okay? Is this the right decision? Can I do this? What do you think? And he was, why are you asking me? Make your own decisions kind of thing. But if he tried to affirm me in anything, I never believed it anyway. It's like, oh, he has to say that, he's married to me, he's got me, he can't back me down. So I figured that anything nice that he said was just to make me feel better, and I didn't believe a word of it because I was too needy. The thing with a needy person too is that with fake criticism, I call it, is they'll say things to themselves like, oh, I'm so fat, I can't get into this dress. What they're wanting the other person to say is, oh, you can, you're beautiful, it's all great, yeah. Or you do a chore at work and you're just not sure if it's good enough, and you say, oh, I failed, somebody else should have done it, I shouldn't have been picked to do this chore at work. What they're wanting is somebody to say, oh no, it's great, and you see it all the time. Everybody's seen that, right? Other people who are always just begging for affirmation by putting themselves down, hoping that you jump in and make sure that they feel good about themselves. So that needy person is going to be constantly looking for validation, but never even believing it. So that's a red flag. If you get into a relationship with somebody who's like that, that's going to be a red flag. Now, that can change, with a lot of work and discussion and stuff, but if there's lots of these red flags that are flying in your face, maybe it's time to walk away, right? Run the other direction. All right. 2, they blame other people for their feelings. So that's the person who says, I'm angry because of what you did. If you didn't do that, I wouldn't be feeling this way. So they're not wanting to take responsibility for their own feelings. They have to blame somebody else if it's a negative feeling, I'm jealous because you went and talked to that guy, or, all the things that go along with jealousy and stuff. They blame everybody else. Isolating and controlling. So that's the person that tries to drive a wedge between you and your family, you and your friends. They want you all to themselves. They'll start saying negative things about, your best friend, and what they're hoping to do is just cause you a little bit of doubt that maybe they're not the best person that I thought they were. They make it really difficult for the person to do anything alone. So, I want to go shopping by myself this afternoon. Oh, let me come along. They never let them come along. What they're afraid of is if they're not in your circle of people who are in your life, if you go out and hang out with your girlfriend for an evening, they're not sure what you're going to say about them when you're not there. And so they're petrified that you're going to say something negative about them, and then it's going to undermine how they feel, and maybe you're going to break up with them or whatever. So we are talking about relationship red flags. It's girl-guy kind of stuff, but it could be parents and siblings and our children and our friends. It's not just intimate relationships. But I think Tim actually wrote this list as it was intimate relationships, but you can think about it in other terms because a lot of you are married and have spouses or don't want to or whatever. So the isolating, controlling one, the other part is they don't want you talking on the phone either. Phone is a big thing because we're connected to everybody by our phone nowadays. So if they're always watching to see who you're calling, what are you talking about, don't, you know, if you're talking to your friend, make sure it's in the room so I can hear what you're saying, like they really, really are afraid you're gonna say something negative. That is a red flag. Number 4 is jealousy. They start accusing you of cheating. They're not happy that you have anybody else in your life. That kind of goes along with the isolating part. They want you to be just you. Yes?
When you say accuse you of cheating, for most cases, what I've witnessed, the reason that they accuse you of cheating is because they're cheating themselves.
Yes, very true. Because if there's not trust in that relationship, then it's probably their fault. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. So again, the jealousy part is if I'm not in the room and if you're with somebody else, I don't know what you're saying behind my back. It could be something that makes me look bad and I can't look bad because again, that opens me up to shame. 5 is disrespectful or cruel. So it doesn't treat anybody with respect. Animals, friends, people, dogs. So they're insensitive to the pain and suffering of others. They just have no empathy at all. They just can't feel it. They have high expectations of children, higher than they should be, and they get really angry when a child doesn't do what they're told, you know. We had an instance of a client back home who wet her bed until she was 14 or 15 years old. And her dad was a very cruel man, and he used to beat her because she was still having accidents. I mean, the kid, of course, was having more accidents because her dad beat her all the time. So he was very disrespectful, very cruel about things that the child couldn't control. So when we talk about the dating thing, we often suggest that people see their potential spouse in all these different situations. See how they are with kids. Are they good to kids, or are they kind of don't want anything to do with them? See what they are like with pets, with children, with pets or dogs or something. How do they treat them? See what they're like with their friends out at the bowling alley. Are they respectful to other people? Are they respectful to the guy who hands out the shoes, you know? Very, very often they're cruel to everybody, and if you see that in any case, that's a huge red flag, and that would be a deal breaker. Yes, please.
I'm thinking that category might include sense of humor, fun, laughter, because sometimes it's just like twisted.
Of course. Yeah, and the reason that they do that is because there's a little bit of truth in a joke, and every joke has a little bit of truth, right? That's why it's funny. But it's meant to twist and hurt the other person, for sure. And then, oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, absolutely. That's very disrespectful. I think that's one of our numbers.
Dang, I'm thinking about my ex-husband.
Oh yeah? Yeah, are these all red flags now?
Oh, yeah, number 5?
Number 5, disrespectful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. And make sure if you have any examples you want to share, just put your hand up because we want to have lots of interaction with this.
Oh, did we say, like, to waiters or waitresses, or like
Yeah.
drive-through?
Yeah, drive-through people, yeah.
That's a huge.
That's a huge one because if they're disrespectful to people they think they're better than,
Yeah.
that's a terrible thing, right? Yeah.
Stay away from that.
Stay away. Yeah, red flag.
Big red flag.
Yeah.
Small red.
Yeah, exactly. All right, number 6. Expects control during sex. And remember, people that were who are in unhealthy behaviors, drugs, alcohol, the people that are our clients, most of them are in this all this complex trauma. They don't feel good about themselves. So many, most of them, I would say, are promiscuous. They're just looking for love and validation. So they get into all these relationships, and of course, first date, they're having sex. So that's something that we have to talk about, because that's a big thing. If somebody is always having to be in control or humiliating the other person during sex, those are huge red flags, and we encourage people just to run away from those kind of people. People who won't accept your no if you're just not wanting to be sexual that night. If they won't respect those boundaries, that's a huge red flag. So that's just kind of an awkward one, but we have to talk about that. 7, sudden mood changes. So it's like two people living in the same body. Sometimes, if somebody's all really happy and good and everything's perfect, and then some little thing triggers their anger, and then they're through the roof. We've talked about the BPD, right? Borderline personality disorder. Their emotions just take over. That just tells me that that person isn't being authentic, right? So if they're constantly pretending to be good and in control and everything's great, and then some little thing triggers them and they fly through the roof, that's a huge red flag. That tells me that they've got some issues that they're not dealing with, and there's a lot of underneath anger and frustration and lots of shame underneath. So sudden mood changes. Number 8. A person that puts you on a pedestal. Now, it feels good at first, right? They come along and tell you that you're perfect. No, it doesn't feel
It
good.
feels creepy right off.
It feels creepy right off the bat.
With a kid, it's creepy.
That describes it really well, that word creepy.
Yes,
You nailed it
yes,
there.
it's an obsession, right? So when they put you on a pedestal, some people really like it because it feels good, because their ego is getting stroked and they're feeling really good about it all. But what happens when you make a mistake, right? They're gonna kick you right off that pedestal and make you feel really bad for who you are. So yeah, putting you on a pedestal sounds like it's a nice thing, or creepy. It's actually both. But you have to be really careful. That means they're not being real, right? They think you're perfect, and nobody's perfect. They're putting you on a pedestal, pretending that you are just the woman of all womans. And then you're a human being, and you make mistakes, and you fail. You got personality differences, you've got character defects, and then all of a sudden they're seeing who you really are, maybe for the first time, and that can cause a lot of rage.
That was always an instant deal breaker.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
No,
yeah,
because I found it creepy.
yeah, oh, absolutely. They're obsessed with how perfect you are. That's not a good thing. All right. All right, number 9 is another big one, ego.
That's like a major break.
Major what?
Major break one.
Yeah. If somebody has a huge inflated sense of themselves, you're never going to be happy in that relationship. So we really say that once you see a huge ego, that's another really bad one that you have to run away from. So somebody who's got this inflated sense of self, they often have to wear masks to pretend to be perfect, right? Because of the underlying shame. And so they don't have this real sense of what's really honest about them and what's really true in their world. So they have to pretend that everything is perfect and that they're perfect. In fact, that actually goes into the psychopath, right? We talked a lot about the psychopath. They've got probably the most shame of all the people that we talked about in the mental health issues. Once you get to a psychopath, they think they're really, really better than everybody else, and they believe it because there's been so much hurt and wounds underneath that they've totally shut themselves down. So the only way they can make themselves feel good about themselves is to be boastful and proud and arrogant about who they are, Problem is they're stepping on everybody in the process and making them feel terrible about who they are. So in ego, they could never be wrong. Again, that's the shame issue. They can't be vulnerable. They can never be wrong because then the shame they feel like they're gonna die if they have to deal with all the shame inside. So that's a huge one. So the other problem with this, the ego part, is our society actually applauds these kind of people. These are the people who have it all together. They've got lots of confidence. They're the people in the parties and the rooms that they control the room and the humor, and they're extroverts and they're out there. Our society applauds those people.
They can become presidents.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They can become presidents.
Oh, don't get me started. I said something a few weeks back about Trump, and I'm like, oh, what if somebody likes him? Is anybody? No. You do not. Anyway, so he's a prime example. You know, they think they can walk all over everybody, and they're very wealthy too, because they can walk all over everybody to get, you know, to get to the head of the companies and the businesses and whatever, and they are applauded the whole way up. Problem is lots of damage in relationships.
They even put there, they never apologize. Like, I know of two people in particular that literally cannot
Yes.
apologize. Like,
Yes.
there's a complete inability.
Yes.
And even when you clearly lay it out,
Yeah.
it's just, they have to deflect. It
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's just ego, but there's
Right.
just something, a character flaw
Yeah.
at a very interesting level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've seen this with people, and they're kind of almost tripping over their tongue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of want it to come out, but not really,
Right.
and it just kind of stays inside.
Yeah, they just don't have an ability.
Yeah.
It's just so
Because that
bizarre.
would mean that they're flawed.
Right.
How could you ever admit that?
I think that's probably one of the biggest things in looking at the red flags. Because, I mean, all of these in themselves, it's not to say that someone with a red flag is a bad person, but if people have some of these red flags and are not willing to look at themselves
Right.
or change themselves in any way, then you know that there's nothing that, it's not going to work no matter
Yeah.
what you do. So.
Yeah.
I agree. I think this is a huge one. I think you could put a whole page full of stuff just for this
Yes.
overnight. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the actual other ones are gonna kind of refer back to this one, because yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah. All right, number 10 is sarcasm. So sarcasm is using words in order to make a joke or kind of do whatever, but underneath there's truth to it, or the person believes it, so they're actually wanting to hurt people. But it's done in jest, it's done with a laugh, and so other people often will laugh about it, so they think they got away with it. But if somebody is totally sarcastic all the time, not a nice person. Yeah, that would be a huge red flag. So again, like we say, there's even in a lot of sarcasm and little jokes, there's always a little nugget of truth underneath, right? That's why we laugh, it's funny. So their purpose is hurting other people.
It's not funny if there isn't some good chunk of truth in it.
Of course, yeah, that's what makes it funny. Yeah, all right. 11 is intimacy too soon. And that's why I put that, the stages of relationship stuff on there. See, I can't talk and write at the same time. So that's the person that comes along, you just meet them, and all of a sudden you're soulmates. And I mean, there's lots of stories that I could tell you about clients who do exactly, I mean, most people do. They are absolutely craving intimacy. They want somebody to know them at the really heart of who they are. So they meet somebody and go, okay, this person is going to be my best friend. And all of a sudden they're in a relationship or close friends, and you can't separate them hardly. And then they find out what their character's like, and then they've got a problem. So you got to start backing away, and it is hard.
Isn't that sort of what the media teaches us?
Oh, sure. Get me talking about Disney movies. Okay, Disney movies, you've got boy meet girl, and within 3 days, they're madly in love, and the world is rosy, and everything's perfect.
I never thought about Disney.
Oh.
I was thinking Grey's Anatomy, but.
Oh! Well, TV in general, for sure.
You know what
Watch
Disney
this.
is?
Oh, my girls growing up, I used to tell them that isn't love, guys. Remember, they don't know each other. They're just infatuated. Try and tell, teenagers about puppy love. They don't get
With
it.
this person and then this person there with
Yes.
the other guy. You know,
Yes.
it's too confusing.
And if you ask them on the first day, they believe totally that they're totally in love. They're in love and they're soulmates and they can't ever be parted, ever, ever. And a week later, they can't stand each other. So intimacy too soon, as somebody that's really pushing for that intimacy too soon, that's a red flag. So they want to skip these healthy levels, It said to get to 3 and 4 it takes 1 to 2 years. So they want to skip that and get to right to the intimacy part and the soulmate stuff. But if this is me, and somebody's jumping to the inner circles, I wrote down on here, yeah, they're trying to take a shortcut to get to know me. They don't really know me. So if they think that they're in love with me, what are they in love with? Because it can't be me, because they don't even know me. So I always felt like I was getting ripped off if somebody would do that. They're trying to cheat the system. All right, number 12. Emotionally unavailable. So I talked about my brother, who's Bozo the Clown. He was the mascot in our family. He's my age, a little older, and as soon as the conversation in the room gets to anything deeper than just the weather and whatever, all of a sudden we look around and he's disappeared. He cannot go that far. He can't go into his emotions. He can't talk about what he's feeling. He's not probably even aware of what he's feeling, but he gets really angry when everybody's talking about their feelings, so he disappears. So a person like that is totally unsafe. He's divorced and single, by the way. Big surprise. So a person that's like that is a really hard person to get to know, because you don't know anything about their inner soul, their inner person, because they're not willing to be vulnerable and share any of that.
And they probably don't know either,
No, they have no idea.
right? So
They have no idea.
They don't know, you don't know.
It just frustrates them and they have to just disappear. No. And problem is that they turn it around on us and say, you're just too emotional, you're too sensitive, we don't have to talk about that, so why do we have to talk about our childhood? Why do we have to go in? They just don't want to talk about that or can't. Yes.
Would it be kind of scary for somebody
Oh.
like this to change? I imagine it would be kind of frightening.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Because to become emotionally available, they're going to have to look at their shame, usually the shame and the issues from childhood, the fear. Fear and shame are the two biggest ones.
The
So
biggest
fear and
line
shame.
they use is, you wouldn't understand what I'm
Right?
feeling.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. You wouldn't understand and I'm not going to tell you. Yeah.
Just shuts the door.
Shuts the door. Yeah. And so if you're in a relationship with that kind of a person, what do, right? Then you eventually grow apart, and if you're married, you grow apart and end up just really distant people living on two different islands. That's really hard to be married to a person like that. Number 13. Yes.
I read someone, this is like my one online dating experience, and he had no friends. He lived with his mom. He had self-inflicted wounds that were so obvious,
Oh,
but
wow.
he presented so well.
Right.
And it was actually that he had no friends that was the red flag enough for me. Like the other stuff I could
Yeah.
overlook.
Yeah.
But when he told me that he was totally in isolation, had no friends, didn't need them, he had God. I was like, I don't know. It just was the red flag that.
Yeah. Well, good that you recognize that, because that is a huge red flag. That means they don't have relationships, right? They don't know how.
Yeah.
So the chance of you having an intimate relationship with that person will be very small. So if somebody has no friends, you have to start wondering some of the questions you can ask. Why does nobody want to spend time with this person? Why can't they have relationships? Are they respectful to other people? If they're not, then people don't want to be around them. Are they selfish? I mean, I know people who are so selfish that nobody wants to spend time with them because it's all about them, right? So all these character defects are popping up if they don't have any friends. Lots and lots of them. And also, if you're going to have a relationship with somebody who has no other friends, you're going to have to meet every single one of their needs. And that's impossible for one person. That's too much responsibility. Smothering. Yeah, that's usually with a mother, but yeah. Yeah, smothering. Yeah, friends like that are very difficult. All right, number 14. Criticizing. Somebody who criticizes all the time. They say that they just want to help you, but really they want you to become who they want you to be. So they're the only perfect person in the world, and so they're going to criticize you to make sure that you become who they think you should be. That is really hard to live with. And they expect you to change. There's no conversation about issues. There's no, what's the word, give and take. You have to change to be who they want you to be. 15, a pushover. So that's a red flag. Why is that a red flag without looking? Why is that a red flag? Somebody who's a pushover. What's that? They have no boundaries. Exactly. Exactly right. They have no boundaries. So if somebody comes and asks them to do something, they say yes, whether it's going to infringe on their mental health, if it's going to hurt their families, because now mom's out doing something, helping somebody else when the kids are at home, not able to do stuff with them. They have no boundaries. That's exactly what it is. They don't know how to say no. So a person like that, eventually, they're going to start saying yes, yes, yes to all these things. They're going to have no boundaries, and then they're going to burn out because nobody can go along that route all the time. They're people pleasers. Number 16, there's the one, people that don't apologize. Yeah, and Mike mentioned that one already. They can't admit that they're wrong. They can't admit that they have failures, that they have weaknesses, crack in the armor. Not going to happen because then I have to look at my shame.
Or apologizing is a sign of personal weakness.
Yes, yes. I could never do that. Yes. I used to be one of those persons. Yeah, glad Tim didn't have that this list when we were dating, because there was no way. I had so much shame. I couldn't admit I made a mistake.
I just put that down as a deal breaker.
I know, aren't I lucky? Yeah, I could never. It was just too humiliating.
What about the person who apologizes profusely?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's somebody who just wants to make sure everybody likes them all the time. So they're going to apologize about everything, even if it's not their fault.
Or they're Canadian.
They would typically be a pushover, I would think.
They'd be a pushover. Yeah,
Typically,
somebody.
that personality is typically,
Yeah.
they go together often.
Yeah, definitely.
They're dating.
Yes.
Switch over in the source.
Yeah.
Or the people who apologize but don't actually change anything.
Oh yeah. It's just empty words.
Yeah.
As long as they apologize.
Yeah, right, eh? Everything's going to be better next time, and it never is. Yeah. All right, number
Apology is sometimes a
17.
license to do it again.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. You're teaching them how to treat you. Yeah. Resentments. So if somebody is still talking about their ex 10 years later, you know that they have a bit of an issue with resentments. Tells me that they can't trust people, they hold on to these grudges, and it really messes up their lives. We're going to spend an entire class on resentment, so we won't go into that too much. I believe that's on Saturday, maybe next Monday, I'm not sure. Yeah, just one comment about resentments. If somebody holds a lot of resentments for their exes, eventually you're going to be on the list.
Kind of like cheating.
Yes, yeah, exactly. All right, somebody who does name calling. Now, conflict is part of life. Conflicts happen, that's not the issue. It's how respectful are they? If they start name calling, that shows me that they are not respectful of the other people. The reason for name calling is to put people down and make them feel terrible. That's what the whole purpose of name calling is. So if somebody is doing that, that is a huge red flag. It's disrespectful, it's abusive, that's verbal abuse. And nobody needs to put up with that.
I think it doesn't even necessarily need to be specifically name calling, it
Yeah.
could just be applying adjectives to you, right?
Yeah,
Just
oh yeah,
labeling
yeah,
you.
yeah, for sure. It's just verbal diarrhea coming out just with the purpose of hurting, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. 19, is a lazy person or poor work ethic? What's that?
Deal breaker.
Deal breaker, I know, right? We have a guy at React right now, he's actually been in phase 3 for, I don't know, 9 months already. He's one of these people, sweetest guy you'd ever want to meet. He's kind and loving and helpful, and he wants to be at React to kind of help the other people along, and I trust him totally, but he's lazy. He can't hold a job for more than a month. I remember one of his jobs was actually at a Christian organization, and I overheard him saying to somebody, well, I only have to get a couple more weeks and then I can go on EI. Like his whole plan was to work long enough so he can go on EI for unemployment insurance.
Yeah.
Employment insurance for another 9 months or whatever. So that was his pattern. He's my age, and he would work for a little bit, long enough to get, and then he'd go on, and that was just his way of life. He spelled that out. Oh my goodness.
Take my eyes off my
Oh, but that is a really hard person to have a relationship with, because they just don't want to do anything. They want to get away with as much as they can get away with. Going to work and routines is really good for our mental health.
Yep.
We all know that, right? You gotta get up and you gotta do your thing. If you don't, then you just become lazy and get into all these bad habits. And
Would that be their core belief system?
yeah, that's fair to say.
Being a child, like how
Yeah.
maybe witnessing,
Yeah.
you know, parents doing that
Yeah.
and seeing, you know? Like
Yeah, that's-
wondering if that's-
Yeah. That's really good, because that would be what they learned as children is you don't have to do anything. You can get away with whatever you want. So yeah, that would be a core belief. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah, let other people look after you.
Entitlement.
Entitlement, yeah, that's another one. Yeah, yeah.
So then the opposite end of that spectrum would be workaholic.
Oh, yes, that would be the opposite.
I don't
That's
see
not good
workaholic
either.
on this list though, so it must be okay.
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that
It's a good trick.
another day. It's a good trait. 20.
You're gonna have 31 now.
Yeah, I know. Somebody who cheated on their last partner.
I will cheat on you.
Exactly.
Period.
If they are capable of cheating on their last partner, they are capable of cheating on you. That would be a red flag you don't even want to go
Just
near.
ask my dad's ex-wife.
Oh, ex-wives. There's more than one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Exactly. And that, we don't even have to discuss that. Everybody gets that one. If they're capable of doing it with you, they'll do it to you.
Should we go for a break?
Oh, sure, Brett. Okay, we'll go for a break. 10 minutes. Spend a lot of time away. All right, so one of the comments I wanted to make is as we go through these lists of red flags for relationships, you might be thinking to yourself, and this happens at React because we have a lot of very wounded people. They say, well, I'm looking for somebody who's healthy, but I don't think I'm very healthy myself. Because I have a lot of these little things, right? So just be aware of it. We're working through it all, and during the process, we're going to become better people. So we can encourage people when they say that, because that freaks them out a little bit. We're working towards becoming more healthy. So number 21 is gaslighting. And Tim talked briefly about that on when he was here, but the definition is twisting the truth to make you doubt your sanity, reality, or memories. So if you think about it this way, you catch somebody in a lie, and then they start twisting the reality, twisting the truth a little bit, until at the end of the conversation, you're thinking that maybe you heard it wrong, maybe it really wasn't true, maybe what the other person said wasn't accurate, you didn't understand it. What they've done is they've twisted it totally to make you question your own memories and thoughts. So that's a little harder to detect in other people, people who are unhealthy. Yeah, go ahead.
That'd be scary if that was a counselor.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. No kidding, yeah, for sure. And there are some like that, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if they're trying to cover themselves or whatever, yeah.
None of these poshes are immune to authority figures.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Masters, teachers.
absolutely, yeah.
And if you talk to anybody who's been separated from their children, the ministry is full of people who are gaslighting.
Yeah, yeah, oh, absolutely, I believe that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally.
I think something I've learned about this is that you may not be able to believe how skilled someone is at doing that. And so
Right.
you may not recognize it
Yeah.
as a red flag because you don't believe that someone could do that or be that skilled at it.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem, right? They'd never lied to me, right?
But that would be a sociopath or a,
Yeah, probably, possibly. But then there are just other people. Now, I would say, I'm not sure if they would have that kind of mental health issues, but the reason this develops is because they, again, can't apologize. They can't ever take any of the ownership on themselves for the mistakes being made. So they have to twist it so that you're the one that's hearing it incorrectly. So it's all, again, it's all that underneath shame and fear, which are the two big things. Shame and fear will cause people to do that. And they can become very skilled at it. Very skilled at it. Yeah. Yeah, because it gets them out of trouble.
That was me, certainly before I became a Christian.
Yeah, yeah,
I could
for sure.
make any reality at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And you just know how to bring people along a way, and just by watching their eyes,
Right?
you can really manipulate.
Oh yeah,
everyone.
manipulation, good word for that, yeah.
And it's a very dangerous tool,
Yeah, yeah, it sure is.
and if you're good at it, and so it's something I always have to be aware of.
Yeah, no, good, thanks for sharing that, yeah.
I
It
think
is.
it's these situational too for people, like I kind of watched somebody in my life do that on occasion, but it's not like they plan to do it, it's just sort of like, it's like they're on the hot seat and they gotta do it.
Right, they have to get out of it, yeah.
So,
Yeah, 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 for
It's a
sure.
life skill.
It's a life skill, yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a tough one.
It helps as well if the person you're dealing with has a really bad memory.
Yes.
I used to get nailed in that all the time.
Really?
Because, it's like,
That's
yeah, it's
funny.
like she remembers every little detail of every little argument or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, that like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the argument. I don't even remember the incident.
Yes.
So she used to take advantage of that
Sure.
situation
Sure.
because she knew I'd forget about
Yeah.
things. And so like things that were never even happened or weren't even possible.
Yeah,
Of course it happened because she told me all these details that never happened and I didn't remember it, so what the
Yeah.
heck, right?
oh, absolutely, yeah. Wow. Yeah, partner as we get older maybe.
All the time, all the time.
The other part of that is, I wrote it down, is they'll also make you feel stupid for getting your facts wrong, right? So by the end of the conversation, you believe that you actually had it wrong, but they'll really belittle you and make sure that you know that you did it wrong and that you understood it improperly. And they'll just really do what they can to put you down and make sure you feel stupid. All right, number 22. Red flag. I'm gonna ask you why, but don't read ahead. I want you to ask you some reasons why you think this happens. They refuse to make your relationship public.
they're married.
Because they're married.
They've got 20 other ones on the side.
they're
Yeah,
shocked.
just afraid of being found out.
Yeah, or
They're
they're
being
ashamed.
found out, yep,
Yeah.
they're ashamed, yep. Yeah, what else?
maybe keep their options open.
Keep their options open, sure.
In the field, you mean?
Play the field. Yes, say some kind of a secret life, yeah.
It's a little out there, but they don't want their partner to get hurt or hurt them by that knowledge.
Expound a little bit.
So someone who doesn't want you to know that they're in a relationship,
Oh, okay.
who's trying to not talk about their feelings on the relationship.
Yeah,
Right, to get into that?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
that they don't want you talking to their partner, there's an alternate reality for them with their partner.
right, yes.
So they're hiding
Yeah,
parts of the relationship to protect their facades, their
Right.
masks.
right, for sure. And just along with that is they don't want you talking to their friends because you'll get a more accurate picture of who they are. You might get some warning flags from there. Yes, Nate?
So maybe they are afraid of the relationship won't last long.
Yes, yeah, they're not sure if it's gonna work out, so I'm not gonna tell anybody, yeah. Anything else?
It's like a whole lack of trust.
Lack of trust, yeah. Yeah, there's lots of reasons.
So another one of those creepy things.
A lot of
Or maybe
trees.
they're not want
Hey,
yeah.
I've seen a lot of
Yeah, so they're gonna keep
ex-boyfriends
it quiet so they don't have to hear anybody else's opinion. Yeah, yeah.
Which is not healthy.
Which is not healthy, no. Yeah, all those things are unhealthy. All right, 23. They have a different idea of what it means to be faithful. So I wrote down a few examples. Is it okay to hook up with someone as long as you don't love them? Friends with benefits kind of thing. Is it okay to have intense emotional or sexual text conversations as long as they don't physically cheat? I mean, if both partners are okay with that kind of thing, I have a hard time believing that would happen, but if both partners are okay with that, then it's fine, right? But if there's an issue, then it's not okay. Is it okay to watch porn? You know, I'm not being unfaithful to you, I'm just watching porn. All those things, you have to come to a terms of what does it mean to be faithful, and you have to both agree on that. 24. Are they unreliable? So when they tell you they're gonna come and pick you up at a certain time, do they show up half an hour late? Do they just never show up at all? That's one of the things that really bothers me is when somebody shows up late. I mean, I'm not talking about here because everybody has jobs and stuff. But if you're meeting somebody for coffee or going out and doing something with somebody and they come half an hour late, what does that really say? They don't respect me, right? My time, and time is very valuable, right? We're all busy. So we, coordinate our lives so that we can do all this stuff and we fit it all in. Somebody's half an hour late, I've just wasted half an hour. I get really upset with that.
So with a good boundary, you only wait 15 minutes?
You call them, where are you?
I remember when I was younger, I'd grown up with this girl and we'd always been friends, and then we got to probably college and early career age, and we kind of drifted apart, and I kind of acted like that because, I don't know what it was, but I just didn't want to commit
You didn't
to
want
her.
to continue
I
that.
didn't want
Yeah.
to meet her these places
Yeah.
or go, and I was like that, and
Yeah.
then, now, we're good friends again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but and I just don't know, was it because, I'm trying to think, was it something I was going through at that time? Or did I sense something, that she was going through something
Yeah.
at that time that,
Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't want to hurt her feelings
Yeah.
by just saying, I don't want to do this anymore, or,
Yeah.
it could be a lot of things.
yeah.
Interesting.
What was I going through?
Yeah, and it was probably something, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're friends now, then obviously you
Yeah,
decided that
that's right.
friendship was
That's
worth
right.
it. Yeah. Number 25 is abusive. And we all get this one, right? We all understand that. And we'll talk about the physically abusive first. If that's a deal breaker. If they push you, if they put their hands on your body when they're angry, that's abuse, that's physical abuse. But then we also have the mental abuse, and we talked about that, calling names, putting down, laughing at you. That's emotional, mental abuse. Emotional abuse is telling you that your feelings are wrong, you don't have a right to feel that way, stop crying, don't do that. That's emotional abuse. Physical we talked about, and then verbal. Somebody that yells and swears at you, abusive to children or pets. That is verbally abusive, and that's still abuse. We kind of tend to think, they didn't put their hands on me, I didn't get hurt physically, but that is just as much abuse as the other ones. All right.
And then of course sexual and spiritual.
No, I didn't put them on there.
Yeah,
It must be okay.
You gotta revise the list.
Yeah.
More on the list, it doesn't matter.
All right. 26, and we're almost done this set. Anger issues.
I love this expression, violates love.
Yes. Anger is okay if it violates love, justice, truth, or respect. It's okay to get angry. Now you have to deal with how you respond to it, but yeah, it's okay to be angry. But you got to talk about the people who have the issues where they blow things up out of proportion, road rage being one of them. You know, if you're just driving a car, it's not a big deal, but road rage, explosive anger, if it's confrontational, and that's where I was going to explain about how do they talk to the waiters in a restaurant. Are they respectful, or do they have anger issues? Are they yelling at them? Do they, you know, treat the guy at the bowling alley who hands out the shoes with respect? Or are they yelling at them about different things? That's blowing things, that's confrontational. If they get angry for other people, so that's another one, that's transference. So I was at McDonald's a few months back, and there was an old man who was just really shuffling along there, and he was in line, and a teenage kid kind of deked in front of him and went up to the cashier because the other guy was going too slow. So that was violating justice, right? But another man, I was getting ready to say something and just whatever, but another man kind of came in and started screaming and yelling at the teenager. So what he wanted to say was good, but how he said it was wrong. It was anger issues. So that was just one example I thought of. It's okay to be angry, but how we deal with the anger is a big red flag. If they're screaming and yelling at people or full of anger and you know all that explosive stuff, that's not good. So this guy was he was advocating for the old man who couldn't get up in line, and that's okay. But you have to be careful. If somebody's always jumping in to fix other people's problems, that's transference too, and that's not a healthy thing.
Is it true that confrontational could have the same kind of qualification in the sense that being confrontational isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when
Right.
it's done in the wrong way,
Yes, yes.
it is bad.
Yeah, and again, that goes into the anything that violates love. It's okay to jump in and be confrontational about stuff like that, yeah, but it's how we do it. Yeah, and when anger issues jump out, that's a huge red flag. 27, discontent. So this person is always discontent. They want a better job, they want more money, if only the kids weren't so crazy. We need to move to a different house, the neighbors are making me, there's always something to complain about, right?
Room's too hot, room's too cold.
Yeah, anything. So these people are never happy, right? There's always something to complain about. So if somebody is like that, that is a red flag because you will never make them totally happy in a relationship. They'll always be discontent, and eventually it'll be you that's going to be the problem. And they're going to be discontent with you. Deal breaker. You got a lot of those written down as deal breakers, eh?
My dad had a really funny thing, like
Yeah.
after my mom passed away, he wanted to date, but he wasn't quite sure, so he looked at all the ads on
Yes.
this thing, and all of them like, non-smoking, don't drink, and he said, I looked to the very bottom of it, it's like, don't do this, don't do that. He said he went to the ones that just said average woman or something like that, and he says, that's the one I picked.
Nice.
Turned
Yeah.
out to be a sweet.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
It's funny.
Oh dear. A poor communicator. Now that can be somebody who just doesn't talk about their feelings, doesn't talk about anything that's going on in the world. Or it could be somebody who talks all the time about nothing. Somebody who just fills the airwaves with all their voice and they talk about everything under the sun, but don't really say anything. So a poor communicator like that, either one way or the other, they just don't know how to express themselves. They don't know who they are, possibly. They could have a lot of shame, and so they don't want to talk about anything that's important. Because what if they say something and somebody else disagrees with what they're saying with, then they feel the shame that they're, not up to snuff with everybody else. So there's lots of reasons for somebody who's not a good communicator. Often to do with fear. What if I say the wrong thing? Or shame, lots of shame.
I say with the,
Yeah.
with the poor communicator,
Yeah.
you like give them a bit of a chance because sometimes
Yes.
if you're shy, it takes
Yeah.
time to.
It takes time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be a deal breaker, I don't think.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
make that a deal breaker. Give them a chance, okay?
Because if you find a safe place with somebody who doesn't know how to communicate, they will start, and you work with them, they can start to
Yeah.
learn to communicate.
Yeah, that's really true.
Was
Yeah.
it your brother you were saying about,
Yeah, no.
was that kind of the thing?
Yeah. Well, he didn't communicate at all. You wouldn't even know he was there in the room until he got up to leave when things got too important. Yeah. Well, that's just a red light. 29, we're almost done. Money problems.
Oh, deal breaker.
Yeah. Now, often opposites attract, right? Somebody who's really good at saving money and somebody who's really bad at saving money, and they can be a compromise as long as both are willing to go towards the middle, right? If one person's a really bad spender and they insist that they're allowed to do that and there's no compromise, that's when it's a problem. Or if somebody's a saver and refuses to spend any money and makes the other person go that way, that's not good. There has to be a balance, compromise, right? But of course, we all know that money is one of the biggest issues in relationship breakups. And impulsive shopping is a scary thing. All of a sudden you don't have money for your rent and all that kind of stuff. So money is a huge one. See, if you're in a relationship with somebody, see how they spend their money. That's a really big wake-up call. Are they impulsive and they just buy whatever they feel like? Or are they a hoarder and don't spend anything? You're never gonna see that money. There's gotta be a big balance in the middle. And number 30,
Oftentimes they're impulsive about it because it makes them feel good when they're spending it.
dopamine.
Yep.
Dopamine is one of the process addictions. Dopamine is shooting in the brain and it feels good. Absolutely good.
I'm learning to just put stuff in the cart and then the next day delete it.
We're just talking about me here.
When you stay overnight in the store?
Online.
Sleep in the car. That's actually a really good thing to do though.
Yeah, because then you get that thing. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you
You
find
get
it.
excited.
The next day you don't really care very much,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Delete it. That's actually a really good tool. Good for you. Yeah.
I've never.
The last one.
It's really fun.
The last one is a double standard. They think they should be able to do anything they want, but you can't do anything you want. So there's a double standard. So he says you're not allowed to go out with your girlfriends at night, but he can be out until 2 in the morning and you have to wait at home alone. That's just one of the examples that we hear quite a lot back home. Seems to be something that typically guys seem to want their girls at home and they want to go out and do their things with their buddies. So that's kind of another one. So there you go. There's your 30 relationship red flags. Any comments or questions? And we're going to go right into the next topic.
There's a lot of red flags or deal breakers.
A lot of them are
deal breakers.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'm gonna be smart this time.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I mean, we laugh about it, but most people coming out of complex trauma don't get any of those things. They don't understand it. They just, if somebody's attracted to them, all of a sudden they're in an intimate relationship, They're at number 4 there, and then they have to try and get out of this abusive relationship. So we get a lot of feedback from that class because people will say, wow, I didn't know it's okay to say no if somebody does something, you know, that they don't like. So it's a really good class for people who just have come out of complex trauma and don't know very much about relationships. Now again, I told you that Tim is doing an entire week on relationships in phase 2. I think he's just doing it one day when you guys are here, but yeah, there's lots of information on relationships and complex trauma. Absolutely. All right, we are going to go right to relationships and trust in recovery. So I think that's the next one there. Yes, it is. All right, page 1. Thank you, Michael. All right, we're going to talk about trust. The definition is, it's a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone or something. So trust is the foundation of a healthy relationship. We all know that. We all get that. However, we have most people that come into our programs have no idea what trust is because they've been wounded in childhood. The 2 people in the world that are supposed to trust the most have let them down again and again and again, have hurt them, have wounded them, neglected them, abandoned them. So how can a child trust when they've never had a trusting relationship? So Tim used the example when he was here of the child standing on the roof and the dad's at the bottom saying, jump and I'll catch you. So the kid's a little bit nervous, but he decides that he's going to trust his dad. And he jumps off and dad, the phone rang and dad went to pick it up just as the child was jumping. So of course the child is hurt and the dad picks him up and says, it's okay, and sends him back up to the roof and says, okay, jump again, this time I'll catch you. And the child is a little bit more hesitant this time, of course, but he jumps and dad doesn't catch him. So that goes again and again and again because children are so trusting. They're born wanting to trust people. So they trust and trust and trust until all of a sudden that magic moment, I think Tim said that was between 8 and 13, if I remember what he said. Between 8 and 13, and all of a sudden they decide they can't trust them. So now you've got a child who can't trust anybody. So let's talk just briefly about what makes a person trustworthy. What are the things that make a person trustworthy? Reliable. Honest.
They value you the way they value themselves.
Ooh, that's a good one, yep.
Confidentiality.
Keep confidentiality, yeah.
They're integral.
They're integral. So all those words you used, most children in complex trauma don't even know what they mean. Okay, so we're coming at something that's just really, really foreign to wounded people. They don't know how to trust. So let's just list a few things without looking at your sheets. And again, some of you came in late. I only hand out the sheets at the end of class, so there's always a lot of discussion, and it's a little different feel when you've already got the notes in front of you because you're just kind of reading it and whatever. But in class, if you're teaching any of the phase 1 class, don't give out the notes until the end because you'll get a lot more interaction. All right, so let's talk about why didn't parents meet a child's need? Okay, there's lots of reasons there, but I want you to think, put on your thinking caps, why would a parent not meet a child's need? Their own brokenness, good. Yeah, their own brokenness, looking at their own needs.
They don't know how to.
Yeah. Don't know how.
The way they were raised.
It's the way they were raised, good.
Addiction.
Addiction, yep.
If they don't understand the needs or understand the needs of plan for them.
Yep, don't understand. Needs. Yep. There's something over here.
Mental health.
Mental health issues, good.
Grief.
Grief, oh, that's a good one, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Busy,
A large
yes.
family, I was thinking.
Busy. Large families, yeah.
Sometimes it's disability.
Disabilities, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe their own needs weren't met when they were growing up, so they don't know what person's needs are.
Yeah.
The illness, mental or otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Illness, yeah. That's slightly different, yeah.
Financial.
Financial is a good one, yeah. They just can't.
Their culture?
Culture, good one, yeah, yeah, yeah. Complicated, eh?
Lack of like community and resources.
Okay. Okay, good. I think we got them all. One thing that it wasn't said was miseducation. So the parents are raised and told that you never spoil a child. Okay, so that what they learn when they have their own kids is you don't pick them up when they're crying. So miseducation is a big one. Let them cry it out. All those things that we learn from Dr. Spock and on up, all the different theories that came out in raising children, some of them were dead wrong. Oh, big one is missed. Selfish. Selfish. What about selfish parents? It's their needs, don't care about the kids' needs, it's all about them.
I mean, you see
Single
here
parent you
this-
have on here.
Single parent, yeah.
What about like distracted by technology?
Oh, yeah, let's put that right up here.
I'd say that still falls under addicts themselves.
Yeah, yeah, it does, for sure. Yeah, it's an addiction, for sure, yeah. All right. So, let me just take that back off. So trust is a hard thing. A lot of kids have grown up without having a role model that they can trust. Someone in their life who loved them and cared for them and met their needs totally. So the conclusion of the child is I can't trust. For all those reasons we listed, a child can't trust. So, what happens in adult life?
Carries on.
It sure does. It sure does. So in adult life, it really, really hurts relationships. So as an adult, it means that I need to risk trusting. And how possible is that? Very, very, very hard. So somebody who's grown up without having their needs met, they can't trust their family, they get into adulthood, and they know that they have to learn how to trust other people, but they've never done it. They don't know how. So they also need to admit that they have some issues, trust issues. If you just put it on the back burner and say it's not a big deal, I don't need to trust anybody in my relationship, that's going to be a massive, massive problem. Yeah. And the third thing that usually happens is that I accuse my partner of being untrustworthy. Untrustworthy. So there's our dilemma. We've never trusted, we can't trust anybody. We get into relationships where we can't trust, and this is what happens. We get a lot of problems coming out of that. So our proposed solution, what we thought was going to make it okay was, I can't trust so I don't have to, but I also have to make sure that my partner doesn't violate my trust. So I'm going to accuse my partner of being untrustworthy. We think that the solution is that I have to make sure that they're trustworthy. Problem is, what happens is all kinds of things. I'll read them off here. We become jealous and controlling and miserable. We isolate them from others. and then we become controlling and miserable. We check up on them, and that makes us controlling and then miserable. We accuse them of cheating, controlling and miserable, and we control every aspect of their lives, and then everybody is miserable. So our proposed solution backfires, does the exact opposite of what we want it to do. So we think that the only way we're going to be able to trust is to make sure that our partner is trustworthy, and then we do all these things that show that I'm not trustworthy. So the problem number one is the problem isn't their untrustworthiness, it's my trustworthiness that I can't trust. So it's not their issue. They're usually very trustworthy at the beginning. Very trustworthy. But the problem is I can't trust, so now it becomes my problem. So what goes on, so for example, think of yourself in a relationship possibly that wasn't the healthiest, okay? So put yourself there. What's the first thing that you think of when their phone is busy for a long, long, long time?
Cheat.
Of course. Yeah, they cheated. Something's going on. They're having relationships with other people. What happens if they're half an hour late coming home from work? Same thing, right?
Accident.
They got stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
Stuck in traffic, I guess here.
With somebody.
With somebody, yeah. That's where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah, they picked up a hitchhiker.
Picked up a hitchhiker. And then what happens if they ask for money from you?
You mean your soulmate or your girlfriend?
Yeah, girlfriend.
A bad relationship.
What happens if they ask for money from you? What goes on in your mind? If you can't trust. If you're not a trust.
Somebody else.
Somebody else, or they're out doing drugs or, whatever. So we automatically go to the worst case scenario, right? Something terrible is happening.
They pay all their bills and
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Okay, so the problem number 2 is I create what I fear. So I become so controlling, and the reason why I become so controlling is so that I think that I can maybe trust the person. The problem is, because I'm becoming so controlling, they're backing away and they're going to leave me. And then I say, see, I told you I can't trust anybody. So we've created the very situation that we're afraid is going to happen. We're afraid they're going to leave us. And so all this stuff that we do, checking up on their phone and checking the gas mileage to see how far they've gone, all these things that we check up on them because we want them to be trustworthy, is causing them, yeah they do, is driving them away, and then they leave me. I've just created what I feel. Yeah, believe it or not. Yes. So this is our big problem with people in complex trauma. So let's go. We've got 9 observations about trust. Number 1 is, to grow in trust means that I need to start dealing with my shame. So if Dad didn't catch me when I kept jumping off the roof there, that means I don't have any value. I must not be very valuable if my dad didn't catch me. If I can't trust my family, my parents, then I mustn't be worth very much. So if someone is going to be faithful to me and I'm going to have to trust them, I have to learn that my parents were wrong to not catch me. That didn't mean I was a bad person, a bad kid. It just means that they didn't do their job very well. So that shame has to be dealt with before we can even begin to move on.
I had to add a note.
Yep.
If Dad didn't catch us when we jumped off the roof. Because I saw that, if Dad didn't catch us.
Yeah, I can change the wording too. I put that if I can't trust, I must not have value, so why would anyone
But I
rather be
wasn't
faithful to
thinking
me?
catch, I
Right, the
was
context.
thinking,
Oh, okay, right, yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
getting caught for doing something I wasn't supposed to do.
Oh, okay, right.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, it took me a minute.
Yeah.
That's
The
right.
shame, the shame.
The shame. What did you do? All right. All right, so I'm gonna get you guys to do another list here. Trust is affected by every aspect of my life. So every aspect of my life. And you've got the list there, but help me out here. So it can be eroded, trust me, can be eroded in every aspect of my life, not just in relationships, but every aspect. So look at finances. So think about a partner, somebody that you have a relationship with. How can trust be eroded with finances?
They don't tell you what to do with the money.
Yeah, they don't tell you at all, so of course you're gonna not trust them, right? Anybody else?
Or if somebody wants to borrow money.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
don't pay you back.
and they don't pay you back.
Or they steal
Or they
from
lie,
you.
or they lie about what they make.
Yeah, lie about what they make, sure.
About it?
Yeah, of course that would erode trust. Yeah, well, of course, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Something for me is like, I don't know about this, but, like, they don't want to share in anything like
Mm.
grocery shopping exactly down the middle, or like, any kind of bill has to be
Yeah.
exactly through the middle. Like,
Yeah.
I feel that's untrustworthy, because it's like, why don't you want to share with me? Like, are you planning on eventually leaving and saying like, I don't owe you anything because we did everything in the middle, or
Right.
what is your?
It makes you
thoughts on
wonder,
that?
right? It makes you
Yeah.
question, so that, yeah, of course trust would be eroded, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a weird one, yeah.
It's a good discussion to find out what's their previous
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you gotta
Why
find
do you
those
like
things. Yeah, why do you feel like that? Yeah.
Or they steal from you.
Or they steal from you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be an issue.
That is an issue.
Yeah. Red flags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deal breaker.
Deal breaker. Oh, yeah, no kidding. Okay, what about taking care of possessions? So you bought a nice car, how could your trust be eroded by your possessions?
If they don't respect your
They
vehicle,
don't
or
respect
respect your
it.
stuff.
Yeah? Fill it with garbage, yeah.
Or smoke in it, yeah.
Smoke in it, yeah. So of course you're not gonna trust them to take your car, right?
Or else the other opposite, like the Shania Twain version where you actually kiss your car goodnight. Yeah.
I take it that's a song,
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. It's like someone obsessing about, like it's the opposite.
about their stuff. Yeah, so
like
if
it's
they,
too much, it's an idol.
yes,
Oh.
and it's more important than you are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
What
Yeah.
about if somebody is emotionally unavailable?
Then you don't trust them?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think if somebody was emotional, I think, this happened, somebody emotionally unavailable,
Yeah,
I don't trust that person.
of course not.
And I'm not gonna share with that person.
Right, your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, yeah.
That's true.
We're not even going through the lying one. I've got lying listed. If you catch somebody in a lie, obviously you can't trust them anymore. Keeping promises, same thing. What about interactions with members of the opposite sex? That's a tricky one, right?
Well, it depends if you're flirting all the time with somebody, right?
Right, flirting is one of those things that validate you. Usually a girl, not always, but it validates you. Okay, I am pretty. You know, I flirt with somebody and it makes me feel good. It's that shot of dopamine again. Makes me feel loved and cared for. So yeah, so a guy has a girlfriend and she's constantly flirting wherever they go. Can you trust that person? Probably not, right? It could be harmless. A lot of people do it, flirting and stuff, but it might not be harmless either. Disrespectful. Did I hear somebody say disrespectful? Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it's very disrespectful. What about talking behind somebody's back? Gossiping. Totally.
Then you go out there talking about. you.
Exactly. That's what I always say. If somebody says something to me about someone else, what are they saying behind my back about me?
Yeah.
Right?
No.
So if they're gonna do it with me, they're gonna do it to me, right?
Yeah.
It's the first thing I think of, yeah. And then somebody that's just really hypercritical. You know, can you trust somebody who's really hypercritical? Criticizes everything that anyone does?
No, because if I'm having a bad day, the last thing I want to do is be around somebody who's hypocritical.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
What
yeah,
about
yeah.
somebody who's just like a perfectionist?
Oh.
You can never do it as.
You can never
good
measure
enough,
up.
right?
Yeah, never. Yeah, yeah. So trust that's just to point out that trust affects every area of our life. We need to trust people in all these different things. It's a huge problem with people who have complex trauma, because we don't trust.
Well, I know what
Yeah.
and, like, this is totally basic, but
Yeah.
crossing the street, I don't trust people to stop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I've got hit twice, so.
Well, that's one.
You've got hit by a car
Yeah,
twice?
not hard, but like one time I even had my kids in their double stroller and I was going across and they tapped the stroller.
Really?
Yeah, so I have
Of
a
course you
hard
don't
time.
trust, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
That's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. So if, again, that's a good example. If something bad happens to us, the next time we're not gonna be trusting, right?
Yeah.
Something happens to us.
And it's
Yeah.
not a bad idea to wait till everybody stops before you step
Yeah, if it has that little walk-in sign or not, you wait.
Yes, that's right. Please. Oh dear. All right. Trustworthiness flows out of character. Remember we had that circle over here? We're not going to trust somebody who has no character because they're going to not be a nice person. So we have to make sure that we know a person's character before we let them in closer into number 3, number 4, into our lives. So if a person is a very selfish person and their most important thing is it's all about me and it's all about gratifying my desires, then that person is not about love. Their character is about themselves and it is not about love. So trustworthiness is about finding out what a person is like in the real them, not the masks they put on and the show they perform. It's who they're really. That's why it takes so long. People in the addiction and the addictions in our React Treatment Center, they don't know anything about testing out people's character. I think Tim may even mention that the other day. People will say, yeah, I'm going to take it real slow in this relationship. I'm going to just, take it a few days at a time, and we're going to, and then 2 weeks later they're moving in. I mean, we've seen it 100 times if we've seen it once. They just can't wait because they're so desperate for that need to feel loved and cared for that they say, forget the character, I'm in love, and they move in. I mean, it's just a really, really difficult thing in this field.
So we don't make them sign a contract of some sort, like for themselves.
We could, yeah. These are people that have already graduated from the program because they think they're all better now, right? Yeah.
Stranger danger.
Stranger danger. Yeah. So, for example, let me do this chart. It's just an example. So we're going to do trustworthy and untrustworthy. Okay? So on this side we've got somebody who is in control of their finances. They know how to manage and budget and not overspend, not buy impulsively. And then on the other side is people that's going into debt. So this person's trustworthy, this one is not. Somebody who's going into debt all the time, right? So that's just a basic example. The other one we've already talked about is the untrustworthy person is the flirting and the cheating and all that kind of stuff. The trustworthy person will deny their own feelings, their feelings of needing to feel validated and cared for and feel that they're still beautiful even though they're old. A trustworthy person will forgo all the cheating and the flirting. So that's another one on that level. And then the third one I had here was a father who promises to take the kids fishing and then wakes up that morning and says, I don't feel like going today, I want to play video games all day, right? So the guy who takes his kid fishing is trustworthy, the other one is not. So that's just seeing it on a graph there. It's easy to say, but hard to do, to learn how to be trustworthy. All right. All right, number 4. So in order to learn if somebody else is trustworthy, I need to learn how to be trustworthy myself. Maybe I should put that, trustworthy. Be trustworthy myself. So if I was somebody else, would I be a trustworthy person? Would I be a safe person that they would want to get to know and go into that relationship development with me? Am I trustworthy enough? I need to learn how to be trustworthy so that I can identify other trustworthy people. So the first thing we need to do is start being trustworthy ourselves. So if I am not trustworthy, I'm going to suspect everybody else is untrustworthy. It's just the way it goes, right? So this is going to be a high priority. And if I'm not trustworthy, all my relationships will fail. That's just a given. Yes, Brittany?
You want to take another quick break?
Sure. Okay, 10-minute break.
Gotta keep someone on schedule there.
That was also
I'm gonna go close down my
I did
eyes.
not do it to the boss.
And they were laughing, and then.
You go with that.
Yeah. They were here. Where's getting
Okay, so you're from Quebec. Catherine.
How are you?
Yeah.
All right, you guys, we only have half an hour left. We need to keep motoring along. We're gonna really quickly go through the last little bit about trust because we're gonna talk a little bit about respect and it's kind of goes along with trust, okay? So number 5 was, I won't be considered trustworthy if I have masks and walls. I need to be my authentic self. So if somebody's surrounded by masks and walls, you don't really know who they are anyway, so you can't trust them. Number 6, the important purpose of dating is to check out their trustworthiness. And again, in complex trauma, we got that all twisted up and they're in a relationship and then they find out what they're really like. I have a little aside there. When we have established relationships, we talk a lot about relationships and trust, but if you're already married or we're talking about relationships with your family, your siblings, your kids, that's a different story altogether if there's not trustworthiness. However, in a marriage relationship, if there has been cheating and you don't trust your partner, they say it takes about 5 years to build trust again. But it is doable. It just takes a lot of work to build that trust again. When it comes to our extended families, that trust can be rebuilt too. And remember, people coming out of complex trauma and unhealthy behaviors have usually really hurt their families by stealing money from them and hurting them in other ways. So trust can be rebuilt, but it takes a long time. And we have to say to the addicts, you have to be patient because you expect them to trust you now that you're in recovery. And it doesn't happen because how many times have you done it? You've gone through this cycle. So it can be rebuilt, but it will take a long time for them to watch you and see if you're actually true to your word this time. And then the third part of that is in established relationships, we have our children. Now children are amazing creatures. They will see people beginning to relapse before they see it themselves. So children, when they see, and we're going to talk a little bit about the domino effect, we don't pick up when we're talking to the addicts, we don't pick up one day out of the blue. It usually happened about 2 or 3 months earlier where you started to let things slide, relationships start building up with unhealthy relationships, you start going to the places you shouldn't have gone to, and all these dominoes fall down and then you pick up. So children actually can see that sooner than the addict usually. And they all of a sudden see that all these things are starting to fall, the dominoes are falling, and the kids will start to act out because they know what's coming. So that's something that we need the addicts to be aware of as well. But again, you can build trust with the kids, but it takes, again, a long time. Trust is a long thing to build. Quickly again, number 7, anybody with complex trauma, they have to learn gradual trust. They want it right away, they want to be able to trust tomorrow, but they have to learn that it's a very long-term thing. Number 8, growing to trust a person only happens when I start risking trusting. So that means jumping off the roof again. So we need to teach people how to do that in a healthy way, in a safe environment, and then they can start learning how to trust. And then the last one here is trusting God is an integral part of learning how to trust. God is somebody who will never let us down, but they have to learn that process because they don't know about trusting God. It's a process. All right, I'm sorry about that, but we're going to quickly move on to respect. And I think that's the next one in your notes. Yeah, you got it? Okay. Okay. To respect somebody is to attach great value to them, and a huge part of recovery is learning how to respect other people and learning what respect looks like, because they're not always aware of that. In a relationship, passion will get the relationship started, but respect is the only thing that will keep it going. So Tim has gotten here 8 observations about respect. Now these are all, if somebody wants to go and do an exercise on the relationship stuff that I said there was 72 pages worth of relationship material, you need to go to the, help me out here, Brett, Technology and Me. What do they go to find it online? YouTube. No, you go to YouTube and then hit what?
Finding Freedom Media.
Finding Freedom Media, and you can hear all of Tim's talks on there. He's got hundreds and hundreds on there. If you want to go and just learn all that relationship stuff, you go to the Finding Freedom Media, and you can hear, I think he's got about 15 talks on relationships.
Or just on the Finding Freedom website.
Or on the Finding Freedom webpage. Okay. So, but we're just touching on these things in our classes. Anyway, Tim has written out 8 observations about respect. 1 is the double standard. In complex trauma families, there is almost always a double standard, meaning that people who are the authority, the mom and the dad, are allowed to have rules that are different from the children. So dad must be respected, he demands to be respected, however, he's never earned it, and he doesn't respect the children. So they never seem to get any respect from their families, and they seem to not, the parents don't seem to notice that that's going on, but it's a huge thing.
My parents used to always say, don't do what I do,
Do what I say. Yeah, and how many
Loud
kids do
enough to
that,
say,
right?
oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so bad.
Yeah, oh yeah, I heard that
That's
too.
not fair.
No, it's
Kids
not
have
fair.
such a sense of justice, they know, right?
Oh, they do,
That's
yes.
not fair.
It's not fair, we hear that a lot. All right, respect is easy when you're in love. Yes, it is. The honeymoon stage, they call it. It's easy to show respect when you're in love. You put your best foot forward, you're trying to do everything for your partner, doing everything that you should, everything out of respect. However, we're going to go down to what relationships, long-term relationships bring, and then we're going to do a little list here. Personality differences. So, you guys have met Tim. He's the analytical, quiet, introvert. You've met me. I'm the opposite. I'm the extrovert, the loud, the crazy. I don't think things through very well. Those are 2 different personalities. So if Tim and I don't respect each other's personalities, that's a problem. So we had to learn really early on in our marriage that we were miles apart different. But we also had to realize that God made us different for different reasons. So together we make a team. But that's a hard thing when addicts come into relationships and they don't understand that there's all these differences and that they have to respect them. They try to change them to become more like him.
Can
Yes.
I say one thing about
Yes.
Okay, I was watching this show and it said something so awesome. They're like, together we're a kite. You're flying up and I'm holding the string
Yeah.
and keep you grounded.
Yeah, very
So
nice.
I thought that was
Yeah,
so
and the other way
sweet.
around too, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful,
absolutely, yeah. Relationships bring annoying habits. So, you gotta hear what Tim does, okay? So, you gotta picture this. Okay, I got the floor now, right? I know. No, I get to. He'll never watch it. So we're in this Tim and I live in we downsized, we're in a tiny condo, it's 760 square feet, tiny little place, and we're luckily we kind of like each other, so we get along okay. However, we have one main room and then a couple bedrooms and a bathroom. That's pretty much it, and a kitchen attached to the living room. So, we got this big long couch. So Tim sits on there, and in the evenings we'll often watch TV together, and we've had to coordinate that, what we like to watch together. But he has a glass, and it's full of ice cubes. All for hours every night, he'll put an ice cube in his mouth and suck it. He's not chewing it and crunching it, but it's clinking against his teeth. Like I'm talking hours at a time, it's clinking against his teeth, right? So when he first started to do this habit, I'm like, well, I can't stand it. And he stopped doing it for a little while, and then slowly, because I'm not there all the time, so he started to get in the habit of having this glass of ice cubes, and he'd clink it against his teeth. So I had to finally come to say, like, this was totally an annoying habit, right? So out of respect, I had to say, okay, it's something he likes to do. He doesn't like drinking too much water because he's actually he drinks too much water and he's starting to destroy his kidneys. So he has to cut back on all the water he drinks. So this is a way that he can get his liquid into him without drinking gallons and gallons and gallons of water every day. So out of respect, I had to say, okay, I think it's something that he really enjoys doing, so I'm gonna let him do it. So the first, there's all kinds of things going on with flashing lights and everything, so it's a little distracting. Yeah, there's gotta be a fire or something going on over there.
No, it's somebody who needed a lot.
Oh, it's at the Mott's? Oh, okay. So I had to at one point say, okay, this is something that I'm gonna let him do because I respect him, it's something he wants to do. But I'll tell you, the first 2 weeks, I sat on the couch and I was almost ripping the couch with my nails. It just really grated on my nerves. And I'd have to keep doing self-talk. I'd have to say, it's not a big deal. It's something that he really wants to do. And I'll get used to it. It took me 2 weeks of just grinding in my head, right? After 2 weeks, all of a sudden that irritation went away. And now he does it all the time. And then my kids come over to visit and say, Mom, how can you stand it? I'm like, I'm used to it by now. But if I was being disrespectful, I'd scream at him. Say, you can't do that anymore, I'm done. But because I chose to respect, I'm gonna let him do it. That's what we have to do in relationships. Because they're always gonna have annoying habits. You don't put Tim in front of the camera. I've got lots of annoying habits he could share. But, we all have annoying habits. We have to be respectful and learn what we can live with and what we can't. Now, I'm not saying that I had to do that. I chose to do it. I could have said, that drives me so crazy, would you please stop? And he would, because he respects me. But I knew that that was something he wanted to do, so I had to work it out. Then there's different agendas. So we've got a free weekend. What do you want to do? I'd like to go shopping, go do something, go to the park, go to the beach. I live with a man who has a chronic illness. Guess what he wants to do? Sit and do nothing and stay at home. And you know what? That could have caused a lot of conflict in our relationship. But because we've both been committed to respect, we have to compromise. Sometimes he'll go out with me somewhere, but most of the time we stay at home because he has an illness and he has to sleep more than I do. So that's an agenda is an issue that can cause a lot of problems in relationships. Anyone want to comment on those? Any of your own?
Morning person.
Yeah.
That is like the biggest problem
Yes.
in the world.
Yes. In the world.
Yeah.
The biggest problem in the world. Yeah.
So you're a morning person.
Well, exactly, right? But you've got to compromise, you've got to make it work, and you can't demand that your husband is a late owl, right? You just can't. It's not the way he's wired. So it's either compromise or conflict. So yeah, any other ones anybody wants to share?
Have to be early, or you're okay with being late?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. That's actually a bit of a boundary thing because being late is actually disrespectful, right? So you have to make sure that they know that how much that upsets you. Absolutely. So those aren't things that I would have any gray areas. You have to be on time. That's a for sure thing.
Here's the thing,
Yeah.
if you know you're going to be late,
Oh, call, yeah.
call.
I mean, it
text,
happens.
Or whatever.
We're talking about if it's a habit that happens
If
all
it happens
the
all the
time.
time,
Then there's a problem, a respect issue,
How
yeah.
do you deal with that problem?
If somebody's always late, always late, well, it depends if they're ready to listen to what you have to say, and just maybe telling him how you, I'm assuming it's a him, telling him how you feel about that, and it makes you feel like you're not valued, your time isn't as valuable as his. You give it a shot, see what happens. I mean, if they're not open to change, then you just have to kind of roll with it, right?
Or just
My
say it's
daughter
a half
Kelly.
hour early.
Or tell them it's half an hour early.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, my daughter Kelly was always late, so I just, instead of meeting her at 9:30.
Yes.
I just said I'll be there at 9:15.
Yeah, there you go.
And then she's ready at 9:30, because
Yes.
she's always gonna be late.
And then nobody's angry.
That's right, it works.
Exactly, it works.
Yeah.
It's called compromise. Yep. So then there's your dislikes and likes. Okay? I'm tattling on Tim again. He loves the Gaithers.
Totally right.
Does it? What? I was gonna say, he loves the Gaithers. It's a music group. It's a quartet band, quartet music, and 4-part harmonies, and it's really lovely. In fact, Brittany loves it too.
Why is that so funny, Mike?
I personally can't stand the Gaither music. I have to actually go in the far room and shut the door and turn on my music or TV or something so I can't hear it. But I can't make him not watch it. He's got all the videos. He's got them all. He's got them on. He would, yeah.
Hey, my husband decided to learn a new instrument.
Oh, you poor girl!
The violin?
Oh, the violin.
At
Oh,
least it's
man.
the ukulele. But
Oh, wow. Oh, well, that's kind of fun.
The accordion.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we've got two people coming together with totally different likes and dislikes. We've got to be respectful of what they want to do, right? We can't tell them, you can't tell them you can't play the ukulele. You can go and shut your door and
Like
turn on
bring
your
it
own.
camping with us so we
Oh.
can sit outside and.
That's
and
perfect.
This is where, go do it, and I'm not on my bike.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I love it.
We get those Bose headphones.
Okay, and then in relationships, there are times when your needs are going to be unmet. Again, we've talked about people with mental health issues. What about somebody who has a depression? The other partner can't demand that they meet their needs. They're going to have a time where they're going to have their own needs that are going to be met in different ways, have other friends around, doing all of your social events. So relationships bring all kinds of things that are going to show whether there's respect in the relationship or not, right? Respect being the overall umbrella of all these things. So you're going to find out really quickly when all these situations come up, is the person respectful or are they not? And it comes very clear. All right, number 3 is respect comes with an attitude and an action. It's not just saying, yes, I respect you, whatever your wishes are, that's fine. It's also an attitude underneath of respect and love, and that can't be fake. It can be fake for a little while, but not for very long, because eventually the actions come out and the anger and the disrespect and all that kind of stuff. But we have to choose to respect no matter how we're feeling, right? We could be tired and irritable. We still have to respect. Now this seems really basic for you guys, but people from complex trauma and people who are in addictions, they don't know anything about respect. This is all brand new territory. So it's just when we go through this kind of stuff, they're like blown away. It's like, wow, really? I can't make them do something that they don't want to do? I have to have an attitude of respect. Are you kidding me? They think it's all, because their whole lives have been all about them, right? Every decision is based on what they want to do. And it's really tough for them to see some of these things. All right, number 4. So there's 3, we'll go A, B, and C. There are 3 aspects of respect that are really important. We have to keep building on the relationship. So I have to treat them as if they have great value. I'm gonna build them up, I'm gonna work on the relationship because that relationship is important enough to me that I'm gonna keep it growing and building and being better. I'm gonna accept their personality. Because that is who they are. So if I start disrespecting them, then I'm disrespecting who they are. They will be different from me and we need to accept the differences. And then, this is the hardest part, we have to accept their flaws. And that is the hardest thing in respect. So this is, once we start accepting their flaws, we can start to really build that relationship because nobody's perfect. And again, the perfectionist person is going to have a really hard time respecting other people because they think that it has to be their way or the highway and it has to be perfect. Hey, we all have flaws. And as soon as we start to realize that, things are going to get better. Now, here's a progression that Tim talks about. This is the progression. So, this is an unhealthy. So that you can see it on your chart there. This is the progression. If we have an unhealthy relationship, this is what happens. So we have an annoyance. Tim's clinking the ice on his teeth and I'm getting really annoyed by it. This is where the attitude of disrespect begins. Then I'm going to start having a critical attitude, and I'll tell you what, it's not just the clinking of the ice on his teeth that I'm going to start noticing. I'm going to be noticing all the other things that annoy me. So I'm going to start getting critical and negative about everything. And then eventually the progression is I'm going to start lashing out verbally or non-verbally. But they're going to know right away that I am not happy and that I am disrespecting them. So a healthy progression is I am annoyed that he's clinking the ice against his teeth. But I'm going to choose at that moment not to disrespect him. But it's going to go farther than that. I'm then going to choose to respect him and then move towards him in love and nurture. So those are
popsicles and you both have.
Yeah, that's right.
Good idea.
Make it work. Exactly. So those are the progressions of the healthy versus the unhealthy, and it starts at the very beginning with that slight irritation. I can either choose to respect or I can choose to disrespect, and then all the rest just flows out of that attitude. So, let's go on to number 6. All right. All right, so this is where we are known to subtly, very subtly, rationalize disrespect. It's okay to be disrespectful because one of them is I'm more skilled, okay? So if I'm better at something, those are the things I'm going to get disrespectful about somebody else against. So if I'm really good at money matters, I'm really good at my budgeting and I don't waver off my budget. If I see somebody who is being an impulsive buyer or a gambler or somebody who can't control their money, then I feel it's okay to disrespect them because I just rationalized that I'm doing it better than them and they're doing it poorly. So it's okay.
Just describe my brother and I.
Oh, no kidding, eh? It happens. Yeah, exactly. But we think it's okay to disrespect them because they're not doing something that I'm doing better. Technology. I'm better at technology than somebody else, which is not true. We all know that. But if I am better at technology, then I can kind of disrespect the person who's not really good at it. We seem to, in our minds, be able to justify disrespecting them. Is anybody getting what I'm saying here? Yeah? I'm a very organized person. I'm skilled at it. So when I see somebody who's not organized, I feel I can disrespect them. And if I'm really observant and I see everything that's going on and somebody misses stuff all the time, I can make fun of them. I can put them down because they are less skilled at it than I am. Okay, we're gonna quickly go through this because things are heating up. Okay, if I'm more mature, if I deal with stress better than somebody else and somebody else is spinning out of control, I feel I can rationalize disrespecting them. In case you haven't figured out, we can never rationalize disrespect, but it happens in our brains, doesn't it? So if my relationships are all healthy and normal, very easily I can disrespect some of the clients that come in that have absolutely no idea how to do relationships. I feel like I can rationally disrespect them. That is just not true. C, self-righteous. Okay? So if I have self-righteous standards that suit my strengths, so I have a good taste in books, right? A very healthy taste in books. I can disrespect somebody who reads comic books or some of the bad stuff that's out there. I feel like I have a right to judge them. If I deal well with conflict, I'm very self-righteous about it because I have that sense that I can be better than other people, and I can disrespect people that don't do that well. You see what I'm getting at? We have this sense that we are allowed to disrespect people, and we do it all the time. I feel like I can disrespect them if they don't respect me. All right? If they don't respect me, I feel I have a right to call them down or disrespect them or walk out of the room or do whatever I need to. I feel that it's okay. And if they don't meet my needs. If they don't meet my needs according to my expectations, which are usually too high, I feel that I can disrespect them. All right. I think we're going to call it. You guys can read.
Push through.
Push through. All right. 7. Okay, this again goes to every area of my life. This is spiritual warfare right now. Every area of my life. Okay, so I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to say it. So we can be judgmental in other people. Number A is body and appearance. So think about the overweight person who's walking along the street. We just have that internal thing that says that it's okay to disrespect them because they're not, fit and healthy and they don't look as good as other people. We tend to be judgmental. Personalities can be different, and we feel like it's okay that if somebody's kind of off the wall, kind of extrovert, we have a way of looking down at them, right? Because they're not keeping their emotions in control. Making decisions as a couple is one of the things. I feel like I have a right to be judgmental. If my husband doesn't make the decision I think he should make, I'm making a better one, and so I have a right to be judgmental. Dividing up chores and responsibilities in the house. It should be a 50-50 mix. There's exceptions to the rule, but if somebody doesn't pull the weight around the house, I feel like I can disrespect them because they're not doing what I think they should be doing. Should being the operative word there. We have all these expectations of what should be happening. What about in social settings? We got the introverts who are along the side of the wall, sitting in chairs chatting with each other, and we have the extroverts in the middle of the room having a great old time. Can we disrespect each other? We often do. I'm surrounded by introverts. I don't understand them, but I have to respect them, don't I? The use of sarcasm, we've used that a lot, right? Do I mean to hurt them with my words? Often I'll use sarcasm as a way of, I'm just joking. It's just a big joke, right? So it can be seen in every area of our lives where we can be respectful to people or we can not be respectful to people. And that judgmental attitude comes around a lot. So here's some examples of how I show respect even when I don't feel it. Number 8, how do I respond when they're having a bad day? So I need to learn what they need. Do they need me to leave them alone and just give them quiet time? Do I need to do one of their chores so that that would make them feel a little better? Do I need to sit on the couch beside them and comfort them? Do I need to make them laugh? So we need to find out what would help somebody in that situation if they're having a bad day. How can I respect them by doing something to lighten their load, make them feel a little better that day? How do I use my free time? There's an area of respect. When I went back home to visit all my family all the time, you'd never know I had a husband and kids. I totally abandoned them. Right, Brett? I abandoned them and I went and I hung out with my twin sister and we went boating and went, shopping and did all the fun things. I mean, it was great. But what my kids heard was, they're not as important as my twin sister. So I showed them disrespect by not showing them that they were more important than my family. So how do I use my free time? Do I spend it alone? Do I spend it with my spouse? Do I go out with friends and leave my husband at home to mind the kids? I mean, it all works out with balance, right? You can do all those things, of course, but not every single night. That wouldn't be respectful to your partner. How do I handle conflict? Am I patronizing? Am I condescending? That is a disrespect sign. It's a red flag. Do I show interest in what they're doing? That's another sign of respect. Yeah. Do I pretend to like football just because the football game's on and sit beside him? And, maybe I will one day.
One day.
Do I show love in a meaningful way? So we've done the love languages. That's how they feel loved. So I can be respectful and do things for them that show them that love instead of doing things that make me feel loved and I turn it on them and do it my way to them. That's not showing very much respect. So sorry for being really rushed at the end there, but we got all our information in. You guys know what you're doing. Good. Thank you.